No per diem today.
Yeah, and you're eating the wrong kind of granola bar. That's two. I call to order this special meeting of the University of Minnesota Board of Regents. And good afternoon to one and all. Let me note here that Regents Davenport, Ipsch, Johnson, Kenyanya, Mayron, Rocha, Tauyarabe, and Verhalen are connected to the boardroom via Zoom. And I am joined in the boardroom by Regent Swigum, McMillan, and Farnsworth. The first item of business before us this afternoon is the selection of finalists to be interviewed for the position of Chief Auditor. This is a very important step in the process, but before we get started, I want to thank members of the Chief Auditor Search Advisory Committee, and in particular, Regent Swigum, who serves as its chair. This committee worked diligently to recruit, screen, and interview candidates, and they have forwarded 3 strong candidates for our consideration. Today's conversation will feel a little awkward, and this is because of a quirk in Minnesota law. On the one hand, this board is required to meet and deliberate in public. On the other hand, applicants for this position are legally entitled to confidentiality until such time as they are named as finalists. As a result, we will discuss candidates this afternoon in a de-identified way. Each candidate has been assigned a number, and we will refer to them by those numbers throughout the meeting. The confidentiality requirement also means that we cannot discuss details of their experience in a way that identifies who they are. So today's conversation may sound something like this. I'm impressed by candidate 12's educational background and their long record of internal audit experience in the nonprofit sector. I think those skills would transfer well, and I support interviewing candidate 12. I know that this makes the conversation more stilted than we're used to, but nevertheless, that's the way we're required to proceed. And I want to thank everyone in advance for your very careful adherence to these legal requirements. Now a bit about process. I'll soon ask Regent Swigum to summarize the committee's process and speak generally to its recommendations. At that point, I'll open the floor to see if there are any overall questions or comments. And then it's my intent to take up the candidates recommended by the search committee one by one. For each recommended candidate, I'll invite a motion and a second to name that person a finalist. Once an individual has been moved, we will discuss that candidate and then vote on whether they should be invited to an interview with the full board. Once we've considered each of the 3 recommended candidates, I will ask if there are any additional candidates the board might wish to consider. If so, we'll take them up for consideration in the same fashion. So, are there any questions from anyone about this process before I turn to Regent Swigum? Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So with that then, we'll now turn it over to Regent Swigum.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I did write some notes here as I present the lead candidates to you. I want to tell you at the beginning that our goal was to make your and my fellow regents, the other the 10 regents, job very, very difficult. We want to make sure that the selections that you choose from are diamonds, that we end up with a diamond as the new chief auditor, and I think we've been successful in that, in bringing forward the lead candidates to you, Mr. Chairman and regents. Your job is going to be tough. Latter part of November, I can't remember the date, but we'll be interviewing then in the latter part of November. And especially, I would like to thank all the committee members for their service, for their dedication, for their civility as we went through this process. But especially, I'd maybe like to talk to thank fellow regents Kenyana and Davenport, who served on the committee, ably staffed by Brian and Sarah, by the way, very ably staffed. So Mr. Powell, Chairman Powell, thanks for the opportunity to describe the advisory committee and its work. It was gratifying to see the committee's diligence as they undertook their work. They understood the importance of the chief auditor role to the university. The 27 years that our former chief auditor has served us. And again, this I think was demonstrated throughout the process by their dedication. Shortly after the board approved our charge, the committee got to work. We met with AGB Search. We finalized the position profile, and then we began recruiting with AGB taking the lead in that. This included advertisements in various higher education and industry publications, as well as an outreach to prospective applicants that we may have known ourselves or people on the committee may have known. Although the pool of applicants was a little smaller than we had wanted or anticipated, the committee was impressed with the quality of those that applied. We think we have diamonds there. We hope that you will find those diamonds as we do the interviewing. I will tell you that in a position like this, we're not going to get the 90 or 80 applicants that we do for a president. We knew it would be far less than that, but we even had a few less than maybe I'd anticipated. And I did call and talk to AGB about that. After screening the cover letters, the resumes, the committee held in-person interviews last month and identified 3 lead candidates that have been forwarded to the board for consideration today. The committee was impressed with these 3 lead candidates and believes any one of them could readily and easily fill the role, step into the role of our chief auditor, although this person certainly will have big shoes to fill. This was a thorough process and a strong one, Mr. Chairman. Our committee discussions were very direct. They were very honest. They were very civil. I asked the members when they came into the room, I asked them to check at the door any biases that they may have. No biases. They have to be checked at the door. And it was clear to me that the committee members did that. I firmly believe that our next chief auditor will be one of the lead candidates presented to us today. So, Mr. Chairman, with that, I'll turn it back to you and thank you for giving us the responsibility as a committee of 11 to bring forward these lead candidates to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Regent Swigum. Thank you for leading this committee, and thanks to all the committee members for your good and diligent work to date. Does any member of the board have a general question about the advisory committee's work or its recommendations? All right, seeing none, I will now entertain a motion to name candidate 6 as a finalist. Is there a motion to move candidate 6 to be a finalist?
I'll move candidate 6 as a finalist.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that candidate 6 be named a finalist and invited to interview with the board. Is there any discussion or questions about candidate 6 candidacy?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'm just going back to my notes.
Yep.
And candidate 6 was a really, really strong candidate. This person presented themselves very, very well. Certainly had a great background, and I think would make a very, very good next chief auditor.
All right. Thank you, Regent Swigum. Any other questions or comments? All right. There being no additional questions or comments, all those in favor of naming candidate 6 as a finalist, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed say no. That motion is approved. I'll now entertain a motion to name candidate 8 as a finalist. Again, is there a motion to move candidate 8 to finalist position?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. It's been moved and seconded that candidate 8 be named a finalist and invited to interview with the board. Any discussion or questions of candidate 8 as a finalist?
Mr. Chairman, I'll just say, since I don't hear any comments, I'll just say the same thing would be true about this candidate. Very, very strong person.
All right. Thank you, Regent Swigum. Any other questions or comments? All right. Seeing none, I will ask all those in favor of moving candidate 8 to finalist, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. All right. That motion is approved. And I will now entertain a motion to name candidate 9 as a finalist. Is there a motion?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you.
Seconded.
And a second. All right, moved and seconded that candidate 9 be named a finalist and invited to interview with the board. Again, any questions or comments on candidate 9?
I have a question.
Regent Mayron.
Yes. Could the committee speak to this individual's experience as an auditor or conducting the audit function?
Regent Swigum.
Yes, Regent Mayron, I will try to do it in generic terms. If I get too specific, I suppose people can identify who the candidate is, Brian?
Yes, you need to be as generic as possible.
Okay, so that means I'm trying to think through this, Regent Mayron, so we don't identify the individual that should not be identified publicly as of yet. I assume maybe in the next hour or two, he or she would be identified. Significant background in auditing at the state of Minnesota. I think I can say at the state of Minnesota. Accounting degree, the years we were looking for, Regent Mayron, at least 15 years of experience. Let's see, what else can I say and still not identify the individual specifically? Mr. Chairman, I'm kind of stumped.
That's okay. Well, and I would just ask if Regent Kenyanya or Regent Davenport were also on the committee, and if they would want to add any commentary on on candidate 9's experience or background to add to what Regent Swigum has said.
This is Mary.
Regent Davenport.
I would say that all candidates have excellent experience. That is why we brought them forward.
Okay. Regent Mayron, I'm guessing that you would wish for more detail, but I think given the constraints we're under, we are where we are. Regent Kenyanya, did you want to jump in on this one or?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think in terms of we, I'm sorry. There's an echo.
Yeah, you're good on this end. Yeah.
Okay. All right. All the candidates we were qualified to do the job in terms of knowledge of auditing and the requisite professional experience. I think where the difference is in terms of, in my opinion, leadership capability, and in terms of the confidence we might have in said candidates to lead, this large function, to play that leadership role, especially in an organization that is of public nature. Whereas in a private entity, you just do your audit reports and report them, where you're needed. But at the university, you are a visible leader. So if there's any things that set candidates apart, it's going to be on that second part, not on the do they know how to, check the numbers and make sure that those things line up. I hope that's.
Very helpful, Regent Kenyanya. Thank you. And something that we would be able to probe during the next round. Regent Mayron, are you follow up or are you okay?
I'm okay, given the constraints we have.
All right.
And
Thank
let me
you.
just say, Chair Paul, just as a matter of process, when any of us are speaking on Zoom, we're hearing again from the boardroom. So actually, it's kind of difficult for us to hear. We're hearing it twice. I don't know if
Okay.
there's a way to solve that at your end.
Okay. Thank you for pointing that out, because we can't hear that, but I'm sure that the good folks who work to pull these together will get on that. So thank you, Regent Mayron. Any other questions or comments on the candidacy, on the moving candidate 9 forward as a finalist? All right. Seeing none, all those in favor of moving candidate 9 forward, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, say no. All right, that motion is approved. We've now considered each of the 3 candidates recommended by the Chief Auditor Search Advisory Committee. Does anyone wish to move for an additional candidate to be considered?
Chair Powell.
Yes.
I'm happy to move on another person, or I'm happy to inquire first of the committee members as to a particular candidate who was not moved, and to find out more about that person, if I could, before I made a motion. I don't know what is the correct way to bring this, to get this on the table. Happy to do it either way.
Can you tell us the number
Sure.
of the,
I'm interested in candidate 5 who was not selected. Again, looking at the position description, building on Regent Kenyanya's comment about leadership capabilities, I'm interested in, to the extent I can find out, why candidate 5 was not brought forward as a recommendation.
question, Regent Mayron, and I'm going to turn to Regent Swigum and then Regent Davenport and Kenyanya to maybe give us some commentary on why we went with the 3 that we did and candidate 5. And it may just be simply a question of the votes, or however you want to proceed, Regent Swigum.
Yes. Again, I'll try. It's an awkward process, Mr. Chairman. It's very awkward. And I wish I could speak more about specifics. Sometimes when an individual walks into the room, you know whether they're going to fit the bill or not. I think in this case, the individual number 5, either from leadership qualities or personality, did not match up to the 3 lead candidates that we recommended to the committee, or to the board, not to the committee. I try and remember back on the votes, and I'm going to send out a lifeline to Kenyana and Davenport. Mike, Mary, there's a lifeline going out to you right now. I think the individual received, when we went around our committee and we all voted for individuals and count the number of votes that different people have, this candidate had very, very few votes, maybe 2 out of 11 or 3 at best, if I remember correctly. It maybe had to do with leadership qualities. I don't know what more I can say, but my lifeline is out to Kenyana and Davenport.
Regents Kenyanya or Davenport, do you want to offer any commentary?
Yeah.
This is Mary Davenport. I would go back to my statement that the 3 we brought forward held unique experiences, very relevant to the position and the role that we're seeking, and were higher level in comparison to the others that we did not bring forward.
All right, thank you, Regent Davenport, for that comment. Regent Kenyanya, anything that you would want to add?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I would agree. I'm trying to pull up to log into the candidate profile and look at that candidate again. But what I do remember is that the committee was, I wouldn't say unanimous, but pretty in conjunction in terms of the candidates that the committee chose to interview and those that the committee did not. I think maybe Regent Swigum, it may have been him or Regent Davenport, who mentioned earlier in this meeting that the initial pool, while the final candidates that we've brought before the board, I think are highly qualified and we feel good about them. But the initial pool overall probably could have been stronger. I think that's my opinion. I think it was generally the opinion of the committee. In that pool, we were still able to find an appropriate number of well-qualified candidates, but the committee, was pretty much on the same page in terms of who was qualified to be interviewed and who wasn't. Hopefully, if I find my notes, I can offer a more helpful comment. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, that's very helpful, Regent Kenyanya. Thank you. And I think Regent Mayron, the way I would summarize it is that for the three who were forwarded, the committee felt that those three really did have the combination of experiences that we're looking for. They felt that in terms of experience and leadership potential, those three really, elevated to a significantly higher level, and that the other candidates just did not have, high levels of support, including the candidate that you're asking us to consider. So that's how I would summarize it. And given the talent and the breadth of the committee, I guess, I'll editorialize a bit and say that's good enough for me.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman.
Regent Swigum.
And not to prolong it, Mr. Chairman, because we had to talk in such abstract ways here and very, very difficult ways. Regent Mayron, I would think that, and now I'm going by memory because I didn't have this down in my notebook, but the three candidates we're bringing forward to you as lead candidates had either unanimous or near unanimous support from the committee members, from the 11 committee members. We had a fourth candidate that came close to those numbers to think about sending forward to the board for an interview, but that individual did, after discussion and consideration, we decided not to do so. Candidate 5 that you're referring to did not even get the votes close enough to warrant further discussion and sending on to our Board of Regents. Jenny, I'm sorry, I can't be more specific, but it's a little awkward.
Mr. Chair?
Can I ask a clarifying question?
Yeah. Regent Mayron.
Were the three candidates and the remaining candidates, I guess it was 1 through 10, were they all personally interviewed by the committee, or is your recommendation based solely on the resumes and references that they provided?
Regent Swigum.
Mr. Chairman, Regent Mayron, we did not interview all persons who applied. I think we interviewed, did we interview 5, Regent Kenyanya?
4.
Mr. Chair. 4 we interviewed?
Yes.
Okay. And after the interview, we decided that the fourth one would be dropped from being a lead candidate to the Board of Regents. So I think we whittled down the number of applicants we had to the committee, just looking at resumes and looking at their cover letters, and that's how we decided to interview the 4 that we did on October 18th, if I remember correctly. And at that point, we decided not to send one of those individuals onto the board.
So it sounds like Regent Mayron, candidate 5 did not make it to the interview round.
Mr. Chair?
Regent,
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I was also just going to say I was able to finally log in to the portal with the details. One thing I remember, of course, this wasn't the deciding factor, but one thing I do remember specifically about candidate 5, in their resume or CV, they had inconsistent dates, typos, and for a position of this nature, I just remember some committee members were not impressed, that it appeared they didn't even take the time to really craft that very basic document, correctly. There were typos in there, and there were some dates that were just clearly wrong because it was jobs overlapping and things like that. So this committee, on top of the committee not feeling strongly about this candidate, I do remember some committee members saying it doesn't even look like they put much time in the application itself.
all right, thank you, Regent
Thank you.
Kenyanya. I'm going to move on. Yeah, thank you, Regent Mayron. Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just in following up and a challenge to, I guess, address the specific comments made by Regent Kenyanya a moment ago. Earlier in the dialogue, it was provided that the candidate that is being discussed, or that was raised by Regent Mayron, was not selected based on resume as well as interview and personality. Well, that obviously wasn't part of it because it wasn't. There was not an interview. One of the challenges with a process like this is that the enterprise that is most served by this position is the Board of Regents. And I always am a bit nervous about a process where the people, the folks that we're having audited are as active in the process. But I think that input is valuable. When it comes down to the hard votes, I have a harder time kind of making that assessment. I would just simply say that based on what Regent Mayron has brought up, I would be open to adding the additional candidate to the process. I'm in a profession where if you look at my resume, virtually everything that I have on my resume overlaps with something else because I'm not exclusively engaged in one activity. And without having an interview to ask this individual to explain what would appear perhaps to a third party as an inaccuracy might actually be something that would be explained and also potentially show complexity that would serve us well. So from a personal perspective, this is such an important position that if there is a perspective by any member of this board that another candidate who I have no familiarity with whatsoever outside of what's been provided through this process recently, I'd be more than happy to add that individual to the process to make sure that we do cast a broad net. And I would think that fairly quickly we would discover whether the concerns that have been raised by members of the committee, do direct us in a different direction. But I would just simply say, having listened to the dialogue that just occurred between my colleagues, I would be open to adding the additional person to the process. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Regent Rocha. I don't see any other hands raised, so I'll return now to you, Regent Mayron, to see if you would like to move, if you would still like to move that candidate 5 be considered.
No, based on the information provided by the committee, I am not going to make that motion.
Would anyone else like to make that motion? All right, thank you then. We'll now move on to the next point. I'm going to invite Executive Director Steeves to briefly outline next steps in the process, and then we'll move to our second item of business. Mr. Steeves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board, and thank you for enduring this stilted, awkward conversation. This is something that we've practiced in the past, and it never gets any easier as we go through these hiring processes. Following today's meeting, the Office of the Board of Regents will confirm with each finalist their desire to continue in this process and be interviewed by the board. at a special meeting that I know is being held on your calendars for Tuesday, November 30th. We will confirm to you when the names of those finalists are public. We get a signed release from them, and we just want to make sure that following this conversation, they wish to remain in the pool before we talk about or release their names publicly. So please refrain from talking about any of the names of candidates who have been advanced to be finalists until you get notice from our office indicating that that we've had those conversations with the candidates. Between now and November 30th, those finalists that wish to continue and that you've selected will participate in candidate forums with university senate leaders, student leaders, internal audit staff, and senior university leaders. They will meet with President Gable, and they will go through background and reference checks and other standard protocols for positions of this nature at the university. Ahead of the 30th, you will receive information and feedback gathered during those steps, including feedback from those various candidate forums. So people will have the opportunity to fill out evaluation forms. We will gather all of those together and we will share that information with you so that you have that background and input as part of your process. And additionally, ahead of the 30th, board leadership will route some draft interview questions to each of you so that you can weigh in and provide some feedback so that those interviews, which interviewing by committee is always difficult. Interviewing by committee on live stream is even more challenging. And so we'll try our very best to ensure that there's some coordination to it so that there's a standard set of questions that you're asking each candidate. On the 30th, finalists will appear in person, we expect, in the boardroom, and you will interview each candidate in succession, and then we anticipate that you'll take a break for lunch, and then you would reconvene after lunch to deliberate and actually go ahead and select the next chief auditor. We believe that as part of that action, or we anticipate that as part of that action, you would authorize or ask the board chair to finalize terms and conditions of employment, including compensation, and then bring that back to the board for final approval at your December meeting. So those are the next steps in the process. I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has about that or anything else related to this.
Any questions for Mr. Steves on the process going forward? And there'll be some a written kind of recap of what you just outlined as well, Mr. Steves? So that...
Yes, we can, when we send you a note indicating that the candidates' names are public, then we can recap briefly the next steps as well.
So you'll get it all, in writing, because there's more complexity to this process. You might not have followed every single step, but we'll get you something in writing as well. Having said that, anyone else, any questions on the process going forward? Regent McMillan.
Thank you, Chair Powell. The comment I'm about to make is in no way a reflection on the quality or capabilities of the three candidates that we just advanced, but the combination of a thin applicant pool, which we were warned about and did come true, and the potential for candidates to withdraw. At this point, I just raised the concern that hopefully that won't happen. Hopefully we'll have strong participation and we'll have a good group of three to choose from. But the way this process works, and I'm very familiar with it, obviously, is just a challenge in terms of depth and breadth of scope of the candidate pool. So I guess I'm just saying I hope we continue to have good participation, because it's in pool coupled with a couple dropouts would leave me worried.
Thank you very much, Regent McMillan. Regent Hipsch.
Thank you, Chair Powell. We're getting an echo here. I think somebody's not on mute. I'm not sure, but maybe it's better now. Anyway, I just wanted to echo Regent McMillan's comments. I'm just wondering if the committee had ranked the three candidates. So sometimes if they go in there and they know that they're ranked number one, the lead candidates come in, and then the second and third may not. I'm just wondering if there's any kind of a ranking that we're using, or because I have the same concerns as Regent McMillan. So thank you.
My understanding, I mean, Regent Swigum will speak for the committee, but just to reiterate, I think a point that's already been made is that the committee felt that any of the three that were forwarded, would do this job well. And Regent Swigum, I don't know if you want to add.
Mr. Chairman, Regent Hips, the three lead candidates presented to you by the committee are unranked. They all three, we, in our humble opinion, feel would make good chief auditors. There is no doubt we wish we would have been able to choose from more applicants, as Regent McMillan kind of refers to. We wish there had been more applicants, but Regent Hips, we talked often that we only have to find one diamond to be successful in the search. We think we have three to give to you, three diamonds, we think, in our humble opinion. But even though we wanted more, you only got to find one.
Regent Hibsch, any follow-up, or are you good?
No, I'm good. Thank you.
Thank you, Regent Hibsch. Mr. Steves would like to make a comment.
Mr. Chair, just to address that question squarely, I just wanted to make sure that you know that the board's charge to the advisory committee was to return the candidates unranked without any ranking. And so they fulfilled that charge and delivered back three candidates in an unranked fashion.
Thank you, Mr. Steves. Anybody else? All right, I don't see anyone. I don't see any other hands raised looking around. So we will now then move on to our next item of business. And thank you all for the discussion of the chief auditor search. Now we will consider an amended employment agreement for Coach PJ Fleck. President Gable, will you please tee this up for us?
Yes, thank you, Chair Powell, Vice Chair Swigum, and members of the board. I'm very pleased to participate in this meeting today as we consider this important employment agreement. Our university is a wonderful place for so many reasons, not the least of which is how fun it is and how important it is for our entire community to be a fan of Gopher football under Coach PJ Fleck's leadership, who has built a program that represents our university so well academically, competitively, and in service. Coach Fleck's record speaks for itself in terms of success on the field, but also in the classroom and in the community. And we're very happy to look into the future at a long, stable relationship with our coach and with a program like this as a key part of what we often call the front porch that athletics plays for the rest of the university. We are a world-class institution, or as Coach Fleck would say, we are elite, and we need to act that way. And as I've always said, when it comes to employment agreements, we rely on markets, data, and market analysis in order to determine appropriate compensation. And in this case, we have a coach with high integrity, high quality athletic competition, and an incredible esprit de corps that represents us so well. So I'll now turn it over to Athletic Director Mark Coyle, who I also thank for his leadership and everything his team does to go into detail on the agreement that we have before us today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, President Gable. Director Coyle, welcome. Always great to see you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Powell and members of the Board of Regents, President Gable, for the comments regarding Coach Fleck. As President Gable noted in her remarks, we are extremely pleased with Coach Fleck and the direction he's taken our football program in his almost 5 years here. In your materials, you saw that we would like to extend him, give him a new contract that is 7 years in length. As President Gable talked about, we feel like it's important to have culture sustainability. And if you look at the success of our student athletes academically in our football program, they have a 3.44 grade point average. They've been very active in the community, whether it be a diaper drive or a turkey drive to help those who are in need. And then athletically, he posted the most wins in program history since 1904 back in 2019. His record over the past 2-3 years has not been seen at this institution for nearly 80 years. So again, we're very excited about this opportunity to extend Coach Fleck and have him to continue to lead our football program. With that, I'll open it up to any questions or comments.
All right. Before we move this to consideration, I'll entertain a motion to approve Coach Fleck's employment agreement as outlined in the docket. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded that Coach Fleck's employment agreement be approved. We'll now pause for comments questions, discussions? And do we have any, Regent Farnsworth?
Thank you, Chair Powell, and just wanted to take this moment to thank Coach Fleck, his family, his staff, his team, and everyone involved with Gopher football for much of what President Gable already said so well. Deep community involvement, deep commitment to on-field activities, classroom activities. Have not had a chance yet to meet the coach personally, but really admire from my seat everything that he does for our program and his commitment to the university. I'm certainly not an expert on employment agreements of this scope, but I do have one quick question, and I don't know if this is for Director Coyle or General Counsel or whoever, but in the materials, I'm just curious about the two items that we're adding to Coach Fleck's incentive bonus plan. The $100,000 for winning 8 regular season games and $100,000 for the 9 regular season games, and just wondering from from market analysis, these kind of contracts, if that's common or not, or just a little bit more commentary on that. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Regent Farnsworth. AD Coyle, I think that one goes to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair Powell and Regent Farnsworth. Thank you for your question, your comments regarding Coach Fleck, and we'll make sure you'll have a chance to meet him when we get to our next normal, whatever that may be. But with respect to the bonuses, you are correct. We did add incentives for 8 regular season wins, $100,000 bonus, and then we also added a $100,000 bonus for 9 regular season wins. If you notice in his agreement, his compensation stays flat throughout the term of the agreement. And in addition, if I understood correctly from our media relations people, we started playing football here in 1882. And since that time, we've had 21 seasons where we've won 8 games, only 7 since 1968, and only 9 times in our history have we won 9 games. So we felt like these were appropriate incentives to provide. And again, market analysis does show that other coaches have these type of arrangements.
Thanks, AD Coyle. Regent Farnsworth, does that get at it?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Regent Verhalen.
Thank you. I really wanted to take a minute to acknowledge the full matter that I'm seeing before us today, and really tail on to what President Gable and Athletic Director Coyle touched on. With this contract and Coach Fleck's actions over the past few years, I really see a continued commitment by Coach Fleck and the university behind him to the whole person of these student athletes. This really includes the expectation of academic excellence, which we're seeing in the record GPA, but also emphasizing the importance of their involvement in the community. Coach Fleck and his wife have been very involved in the university community and have impressed upon these men the importance of contributing to their communities in different ways and in ways that fulfill each of them. And that's really important to see as we think about the mission of the university's outreach. And then, quite honestly, lastly, Coach Fleck and his team are going to have a challenge ahead of them as it relates to these men becoming entrepreneurs in their name, image, and likeness under the new policies that are available to them, the new opportunities that are available to them. And there's really, from my perspective, a hope that Coach Fleck and his team will support these men in those opportunities as they come forward, not just as student athletes, but also as entrepreneurs in their own right. So thank you.
Thank you, Regent Verhalen, for those comments, and I'm sure that Coach Fleck and his wife appreciate those. AD Coyle, any comments or thoughts on Regent Verhalen's remarks?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Powell and Regent Verhalen. Thank you for your comments. And I had a hard part understanding the second part regarding, I think, name, image, and likeness and the student athletes having the opportunity. We have a program here at Minnesota called Mindset that all of our coaches, including Coach Fleck, work closely with our student athletes to make sure we educate them on those opportunities. And obviously, we feel like our vibrant business community here in the Twin Cities in the state of Minnesota is a huge advantage for our student athletes as they continue to get their education and compete at the highest level.
All right. Thank you, AD Coyle. Regent Hipsch.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Powell. First of all, I just want to say congratulations to getting this contract done. I think it's really important for the state of Minnesota and for Minnesota football that we have the consistency of somebody as great as Coach Fleck. I think he does a wonderful job with the students. I haven't talked to anybody in the state that doesn't want us to do this contract. And I think it's going to be good for the student athletes because as he's recruiting people, they know that he's got a home here. And I do think he makes Minnesota better. So I hope we all vote for this enthusiastically. Thank you.
Regent Rocha.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Athletic Director Coyle, and to your staff. The fact is that these are mind-numbing numbers for most folks. This is what's happened in athletics generally and in intercollegiate athletics over the last couple of decades has been pretty amazing. And I echo the comments of my colleagues in stating that getting this done and maintaining some continuity in the program is really important. Particularly when you look at the length of time, when people ask questions about, the need for a renewal of a contract that still has a number of years left on it, the process for recruiting, ensuring, young athletes that the coach will be with the organization throughout their collegiate career. These things are all of substantial value. And in this particular position, as a head coach of this program is so important for balancing the budget across the board for all of our intercollegiate athletics, as well as seeking to minimize the amount of subsidy that comes into intercollegiate athletics from the institution as a whole, ultimately affecting the cost of attendance for students on each of our campuses. I will say the one part in Regent Farnsworth raised this already. I raised this issue. I did not have an opportunity to speak to Director Coyle, but I did speak with President Gable and Vice Chair Svigum a bit about this. Is that I think for some people it'll be hard to understand bonuses that address winning games as a Big Ten school. Under the presumption that we should take care of business with our non-conference schedule, we're running just over average when we get to 8 wins, 9 wins, when these are things that we would expect to do to not only be economically successful, but competitively successful. I do appreciate Director Coyle's response to that when looking at it from a historic view, but I do recognize that there will be some people in the public that will have questions about providing bonuses at that level as opposed to bonuses that apply when we've reached bowl games at a certain level or a competitive result within our division or the conference as a whole. That being said, again, I'll come back to the positive that getting this done now, I think, is really important for the institution. Appreciate that being done, and I've been very impressed with the enthusiasm and the energy and the commitment demonstrated by Coach Fleck and his staff, and hope that this yields great dividends to the institution as we go forward. Thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Chair. I plan to support the contract.
Thank you, Regent Rocha, for those comments. Thank you. Regent McMillan.
Thank you, Chair Powell. I'm going to speak in favor of this contract as well, although I struggle and have over my time to see some of the numbers and think about athletics when it's not part of our one of the 3 parts of our core mission. But I know how important it is, and I have given this some thought, and I want to speak in favor around three key elements. First of all, and this has been addressed by several of my colleagues, Coach Fleck, his leadership team on the football team, and his wife have invested in and embraced this community and this state in a wonderful way, and that's huge. I believe Coach Fleck is going to win a lot more games than he loses, and most importantly, from all I can see, subjectively and objectively, he's got the culture correct in that program, and that's really important. So I will be voting yes.
Thank you, Regent McMillan. Regent Swigum.
Mr. Chairman, just very quickly, Mark, I applaud this contract, the extension, and the commitment to Coach Fleck, and in turn, Coach Fleck's commitment to Minnesota. I think that is extremely important that we hear and see and hear his commitment to us as well as our commitment to him. And I think it was cooperation you brought together very, very well. Just very quickly, I do minimal research, Mark, very minimal. And to Regent McMillan's comment, I happened to Google the 50 states, the highest paid public official in those states. And when it comes out, there was one state that the dean of the medical school was highest paid. There was one state that the university president was the highest paid individual.
Where's that?
There was one state that the basketball coach, the head basketball coach, men's, I assume, I don't know that for sure, but men's was the highest. And I think the other 46 states were all the football coach. It's a market out there. We cannot replace Coach Fleck. At least easily we cannot replace him. And so Mark, his commitment to us, I think, by the way, Dave, I thought I was going to find the Speaker of the House up there as the one with the highest paid public official. Didn't register. McMillan was. But anyway, thank you for working this out, and the commitment both ways. PJ's commitment to Minnesota, I think, is extremely important.
All right, very good. Any other? Okay, there are no other questions or comments that I see, and so therefore at this point in time, I will ask for all those in favor of approving the PJ Fleck's contract, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. All right, this motion is unanimously passed. AD Coyle, please pass on to Coach Flex the strong support of the board for his leadership and his service and what he's doing for our program. I won't repeat what everybody has been saying, but we really like PJ, and we know that he likes us. He's the right person for this program, and we couldn't be happier. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Powell, members of the Board of Regents, and President Gable.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for your participation in this special meeting today. There being no additional business before the board, this meeting is adjourned.